how much money are the hospitals making out of this? So, the GP has said we're not making any money out of it. So maybe the hospitals are doing it. So you might give us your side of the story, inshallah ta'ala. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm very delighted this evening, mashallah, to have here with me two wonderful brothers, two wonderful doctors, Dr. Yusuf and Dr. Al-Khalifa. And we're going to have around the table discussion regarding the COVID-19 vaccinations, while we're also addressing and responding to the questions of our community members. And inshallah ta'ala, the doctors will deal with those questions tonight, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. So before I begin, I would like to begin with Dr. Yusuf, if he can introduce himself, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. And then after that, I'm going to go to Dr. Al-Khalifa. So may I take this opportunity and ask Dr. Yusuf to introduce himself, inshallah ta'ala.
Yeah, Bismillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Muhammad Yusuf Musa, so I'm one of the doctors. I'm a GP in Greater Manchester area. So thank you very much for welcoming me to this exciting discussion, and to the masjid. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh.
MashaAllah. And now, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, jazakallah khair to Dr. Yusuf. And let me, inshallah ta'ala, and move on to Dr. Al-Khalifa. And please, if you can introduce yourself, inshallah ta'ala, to our audience and viewers, inshallah.
Thank you ever so much for having me today. My name is Dr. Al-Khalifa. I'm immunology consultant at Salford Royal Hospital, also a lecturer at the University of Manchester. With regards to COVID, I've led the allergic reactions to COVID at the Greater Manchester Vaccination Hub, and I'm really delighted and very grateful for the team and the community here at Al-Furqan, and I'm very happy to be here and answer any question you have got. Thank you.
Okay, Jazakallah khair to both of our doctors. And inshallah ta'ala, I have a number of questions, and we got these questions from our community members. And inshallah ta'ala, the first question I would like to begin with, and I'm going to begin with Dr. Yusuf. And how does the vaccination actually, or the vaccine, and how does it work?
Currently in the UK, we have two main vaccines. We've got the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, and we've got the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Both of the vaccines work in different ways, but essentially the key component is that they get an aspect of the virus into your body, so your body will recognize the virus and it will produce a response. And I think Dr. Khalifa will explain it in a bit more detail and elaborate on the immunology, the response that the body produces to fight off the infection.
Thank you very much. Well, let's just put it very simple. So imagine, I usually describe this to medical students as well, and trainees and people asking me, imagine the virus as a human being, right? And this human being have got a uniform. Now, the virus tries to come to the body and try to make an immune response. So when the immune system see the virus, try to target which part of the virus will be easy to target. So when scientists think about a vaccine, they try to get bits of that virus to the body so the immune system can produce an immune response, and without causing the actual disease. So for example, in COVID-19 vaccination, they had a look on the spike protein, which is the outer part of the virus. Okay. So in the uniform case, for example, the uniform where the virus have got spikes to get into the body. So this vaccine is not the whole virus, it's only part of the virus. And because of this spike protein coming to the body, then the immune system will be ready and produce very good immune response. That's antibodies or T cells. So by then, when the actual virus coming in, the immune system is ready to fight. That's kind of a nutshell. But when we go through the question later, we can go exactly how that works.
Very good. Thank you very much to both of you, doctors. And the next question is going to be for Dr. Al-Khalifa. And how will we know if the vaccine is going to work?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
So as I said, when scientists have a look on the journey of the virus coming to the body, then they see what part of the immune system actually very effective to prevent the virus or the infection, generally speaking, for the virus or bacteria. Now, in COVID-19 case, for example, then they looked into the antibody. So when the virus comes to the body, try to get to one of the small part of the body called cells. So try to get inside the cells. And then the virus, when it become many numbers inside the cell, will come out, go to a different cell. Now, in that journey, the antibodies, which are protein in the blood, try to stop the virus from going around. So that's one of the main response. The body produces an antibody, and we can measure this antibody to actually see the immune system or the body mount a response. The second important part of the immune system is what we call it T cell. It's just one of the cells in the body. Again, it's very important to actually destroy the cells that contain the virus. So both arms of the immune system prevent the virus from spreading and causing disease in our body.
Yes. And I'm going to also ask this following question. And how quickly does the vaccine actually work?
So this is a really good question, Sheikh Mohammed. I think it's kind of steps. So when you have got any injury to the body or infection, you've got if you like first line responder, and then the special forces will come later. So the first line responder trying to actually respond to the vaccine, but the memory of the first line responder of the immune system wouldn't last long. You want the special forces to come in and actually produce that kind of a long-term memory. So try to explain, usually you've got the brain memory and the immune memory. So that's kind of what we're trying to develop, the immune memory. So when you have the vaccine, you get some kind of symptoms in day 1 and 2, fever and flu-like symptoms. That's where the immune system starts to respond. But the actual immune, the special forces, the actual antibody and T cell, start from day 10 onwards. Now, from the studies now we have, we know within 10 days you're going to start producing antibody. But then when you come to 3 weeks, then that's when the actual full response will appear. And that's why when we start talking about the first dose later and the second dose and the period, after the first dose, 3 weeks later, you have got the full response. But from week 1, from the end of week 1, I would start expecting some response to the virus.
Very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Al-Khalifa. And if I move on to Dr. Yusuf for the next question, and which vaccine do you think works better? Which one is better?
So
we have multiple vaccines.
Yes, yeah. So the UK have ordered 3 different vaccines. The ones that we currently use in the UK are the Pfizer and the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. So in terms of the UK, we advise that both are equally effective. And if you get offered one of the vaccines, usually we advise that you should take it. So they're both equally effective.
Very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Yusuf. And if I can go to Dr. Al-Khalifa and ask him the following question, which is, does the vaccine actually work against other new strains, for example?
So this is one of the challenging progression of disease in kind of public health, generally speaking. So I'll try to explain this in a very simple way. Remember the first example, Sheikh, when I described the virus as a human being with a uniform? So viruses come together and have a party and try to swap parts. So they swap the hats, they swap the uniform, the shirt, and all that. So the immune system, unfortunately, in the beginning, they had to look on the virus and produce an immune response, either antibody or T cell, against certain parts of the body. So, for example, the uniform we're talking about. But now the virus tried to deceive the immune system and have a different part of the uniform, so that the immune system wouldn't recognize it straight away, but may recognize other part of it. So let's have a look on this variant. So we've got different variants all the time, and obviously any virus in the world we know, they will develop, they will produce different variants, and then the immune system is very clever. Usually they try to cover the whole part of the immune system. So last example, I'll just give you an example. For example, in such we've got the Brazilian variant, we've got the South African variant, we've got the UK variant here. Generally speaking, the studies so far found that the current vaccines, particularly I'm talking about the mRNA vaccine, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine, does cover the variant available. But that doesn't mean in the future that might not work, or we might have a new variant and we need a new vaccine. That's very difficult to say. But then the good news we know about coronavirus, generally speaking, the family, they're very slow in changing the variant, not like flu vaccine. So flu vaccine, every year we have to have a new vaccine because they change all the time. But coronavirus is very slow, although we've seen some variant different, and even variant, we describe variant of, some of them are very significant, some of them are just a change, but not really significant. So I think so far we kind of happy that the vaccine would cover. But going forward, I think that's going to be a difficult question. And there's millions of pounds being spent to actually research this and find out how we can answer this question.
Wow. Thank you very much, Doctor. And if I move on to the next question, which I'm going to be asking Dr. Yusuf, and what side effects do the vaccines have, like?
So in terms of the common side effects, first of all, it's important to recognize that every medication that we take will come with side effects. But some of the common side effects, Dr. Khalifa already touched on it, because the vaccine will teach your body how to recognize the COVID virus. You may experience some mild headache, you may experience fever, some people experience a bit of a joint ache, and some other mild side effects such as that. And usually for those things, they don't last very long. And if you take simple medications that would help with fever and headache, such as paracetamol and ibuprofen, they usually manage those side effects. So the side effects tend to be mild and they don't last very long. And also you may get a bit of a where we tend to inject the vaccine, you may have a injection site tenderness as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Yusuf.
Can I add one thing here, Sheikh? So I always call this side effects as expected effect.
Okay.
Because you actually going to have some sort of effect in your body. You're inducing a war inside. Okay. So this immune system tries to produce an antibody against or T cell against. So there's definitely will be some sort of side effect. And as Dr. Yusuf explained, it can be local, it can be systemic. Allergic reaction are different, and we can talk about this later.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, doctors. And the next question that will naturally come, and for example, this question goes and says like this. And for example, if I have already had the COVID-19, do I still need to get vaccinated, for example?
So because I have got this question all the time.
Okay.
And I think this is really important. There is actually some publications saying if you had an infection, one dose might be enough. But then why we have a booster vaccine and why we have 2 doses and why we need the vaccine? That's kind of the question we have. Now, in the beginning, go back to March 2020 when the actual pandemic kind of declared and people tried to understand how long the protection will last for. Now, the studies confirm that after infection, you can have a protection for up to 6 months. Although some people said 6 weeks, some people said 3 months. But up to 6 months, you're going to still have some protection. But what we want is, we want a long-term protection. Remember the brain memory we're talking about. So try to boost this memory. Because if the immune system sees this pathogen, this virus, will recognize again. But the immune memory will forget that quickly. So we have to remind them again. And that's why we're asking about the vaccine. Now, when you go for the second dose, first dose, for example, after the infection, that will memorize and wake up the immune system. And then the immune system will be reminded about the virus. So we'll have another protection for 6 or 9 months. If you had another dose, that's even better because that's going to be long-term. And the simple example, when you talk about the childhood vaccination, they have more than 1 dose. They have like one at, kind of first year and third year and 6th year. And these doses to kind of boost that immune memory.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. The next question, and I'm going to ask Dr. Yusuf, and will I be, let's say, imagine that I took the vaccination and will I be able to pass on the virus to others if I had the vaccine?
So in terms, like Dr. Al-Khalifa already covered, when you have the vaccination, it will take a couple of days, a few weeks for you to produce an immune response. So your body can recognize the virus, and if you get the virus, it can produce a response. Occasionally, we have seen that some patients may have COVID already, or they may get the COVID virus prior to them developing protection before those sort of 22 days. If you get COVID during that period, you can still pass it on. So in terms of the usual advice, the government advice of being cautious, washing your hands, wearing face mask, and if you notice any symptoms that are different from the typical responses that we would expect, or if if the test and trace contact you, then you should self-isolate. So the question is, once you produce an immune response, then we would expect you will have a level of protection. But during that period, if you get the virus, you could still pass it on. I think I'll let Dr. Khalifa elaborate on it further.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely agree with you, Dr. Yusuf. I think that's really a good explanation. So remember when I was mentioning when the virus coming in, get to one of the cells of the body and then try to spread between different cells, right? If you've got the immunity and you've got the vaccination, then the immune system is awake and ready to prevent the virus from going around. So once you get the infection, you'll get rid of it very quickly. But if you've never seen the infection before, the virus will spread all over the body before you actually get rid of it. So vaccination, generally speaking, would reduce transmission. But as Dr. Yusuf mentioned, in the first few days, many people say, oh, I had the vaccine and 3 days later, I've developed the virus. So that's mean you actually had the virus long before. The virus will stay roughly 2 weeks to actually produce symptoms. So you definitely had the virus before you actually had the vaccine. Because the vaccine is literally part of the virus, it's not the virus. So you never develop an infection because of the vaccine.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Khalifa. And the next question, and if I may ask Dr. Yusuf, is the vaccine compatible with our religion?
So that's a very good question, and obviously as Muslims, it's questions that we should ask ourselves, whether the things that we put into our body is halal or haram. But that's also something that we tend to leave for people like yourselves, our sheikhs, to give us guidance on this. In terms of the two vaccines, generally speaking, the sheikhs that have looked into this that are available to us have said that they are compatible with Islamic life, so they are halal. One of the vaccines have got a very minute amount of ethanol, but it doesn't have any. Both of the vaccines don't have animal products, and one of the vaccines have got a very minute amount of ethanol, and it's less than what we would normally expect in a slice of bread, or even in a banana peel. And the one that has got the minute amount of the alcohol that I mentioned is the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. The amount of alcohol ethanol it has, it is 0.002 milligrams per dose. Like I said, and that's a lot less than what is what we see on a slice of bread and even in a banana.
Very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Yusuf, for answering that amazing question. And let me ask Dr. Al-Khalifa, and maybe you might have answered this question previously, or you might have touched upon it. And how long can someone wait between COVID vaccine doses?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
So remember, Sheikh, the studies in America back in last year, they've done the study only, you had the first dose, and then 3 weeks later, you have the second dose, or 4 weeks later in different other studies. But in the UK, we've taken a different approach. And I think we reanalyze the data, and we know after 3 weeks following the first dose, you'll get the maximum response. So because they want to get the maximum benefit to majority of the population, and that's how successful the vaccination scheme has been in the United Kingdom. So what we did then, we had the first dose, and the second dose, we tried to make it before 12 weeks period. So within that period, you'll have the second dose. And the whole idea of this is to get as many people as possible to have the first dose. And then when we come to the second dose, then we go with the same priority list. We go from the eldest all the way down to the young people. And the people with medical problems will have the priority.
Very good. And thank you very much, Dr. Al-Khalifa.
Welcome.
And I would like to thank both doctors for giving us some of their precious times and answering some of the questions that we have received from the community. And let me give to both of the doctors, inshallah ta'ala, if they can give us a final word of advice to the community, if they can give them, and what would be your overall advice in a summarized way. And Dr. Yusuf, what would you say to the community members, for example, with regards to the vaccination in general? Yes.
In general, okay. Yeah. Thank you, Sheikh, for that brilliant question. We've had, like we know, COVID has been around for a year now in the UK, and subhanAllah, we were talking about the last normal Jum'ah that we had, which was about a year ago, and since then we have lost our loved ones due to COVID. Now we have got this vaccination, and the thing is, there's a lot of myths that are going around, and there's a lot of bad things or bad stories that are being told. So it's important as Muslims that we educate ourselves, and if we have any questions, we have got brilliant doctors like Dr. Al-Khalifa and other Muslim doctors, and like people like yourself who can answer any Islamic questions. So generally, my advice would be, if you get offered the vaccine, it is because you would be in a high risk group, and the advice would be to consider taking it. There are a few other questions that we've been asked in the past in terms of our GPs making money out of this. And the vaccine themselves cost about £12. And as GPs, it's not something that we are making money off because we have to pay for our doctors, our nurses, the buildings that we're using, electricity. So there's no financial gain, and it's just a matter of helping the community to recover, so that we can do better with the COVID vaccine. And also, there's a lot of myths in terms of saying that it will be compulsory. That there is no such thing, and no one's going to force anyone to use something that they're not comfortable with. So my general advice would be, do read about it. If you have any questions, you can always approach the masjid, and if we do any future sessions, you can submit your questions and we can answer it as well, inshallah.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair. You've touched upon some important points there. Also, and something that Dr. Yusuf has touched upon, I would like to ask Dr. Al-Khalifa, and since you are a doctor who works at the hospital, how much money are the hospitals making out of this? So the GP has said we're not making any money out of it.
Absolutely.
So maybe the hospitals are doing it. So you might give us your side of the story, inshallah ta'ala.
So we started our vaccination hub. Thank you very much, Sheikh. We started our vaccination hub at Salford Royal Hospital, which is the first hub for Greater Manchester, and the whole hub run by volunteers. I led the allergic reaction side of the vaccination for free, having paid for that, and the main thing I just want to get that is just for the community. Maybe not many people are aware, but the most effective healthcare strategy throughout life, after clean water and clean hands, has been vaccination.
Wow.
Which saved millions and millions of lives throughout centuries.
MashaAllah.
And now in the UK, I think we're very lucky having that. And rather than asking whether we have the vaccine or not, I mean, go back to our countries in Africa. People will pay everything to get the vaccine.
Absolutely.
And we're here having the vaccine at the, just at the end of our street. I think would be very, very, we have to have it. We have to have it. And again, it's not mandatory, as we said. It's not, but we strongly recommend it to have it and to come back to normal. We'll be able to come to the mosque and do our activities and get the kids back to their social life and get them to know and learn in circles with you in the mosque and the rest of the sheikhs. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakumullah khair to both of our doctors, mashallah, for giving us some of their precious time. And it has been really a pleasure to have you here with us tonight. And mashallah, the community will definitely appreciate your response to the questions. And definitely later on, hopefully, if they have more questions, we would like to invite you again. And inshallah ta'ala, you'll be able to respond to their concerns and also their questions. So definitely, we will definitely invite you and have you again, inshallah inshallah ta'ala. So Jazakallah khair to Dr. Yusuf and Jazakallah khair to Dr. Al-Khalifa. And also let me take this opportunity to thank our media team as well for the hard work. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them greatly.
Ameen.
And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give shifa to everyone who is feeling unwell. And those of us who are still feeling well, may Allah protect us from any disease.
Ameen.
Wa jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And finally, I want to say to the doctors, jazakumullah khair on behalf of the community. We know that you guys are working really, really hard to try and protect people and help them with their health. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you greatly. Definitely, if you put, and while you're going to work every morning, if you have the intention that you're doing this also for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll be rewarded, and on top of that you'll get paid as well. So inshallah ta'ala, don't lose the ajr as well, don't lose out the ajr as well. So jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.